welcome to Project Quantum Leap, the podcast where we leap from 3 separate timelines to explore a new show and revisit the one that started it all. Hi, I'm Christina, and I've been obsessed with Quantum Leap since the 90s, and I'm thrilled to finally have a new show to look forward to. Along with me is my brother Andrew.
Hello, I'm Andrew. I'm a huge sci-fi nerd. I've been around and watched many sci-fis. I'm not as necessarily as versed into Quantum Leap as my sister Christina, but I grew up watching it because she always watched it around me, and it kind of left its mark and probably was a very big contributor to my love of all things sci-fi. And with us also is my fiance, Sydney.
Me. I'm here too. Hey, I'm Sydney. I am the Quantum Leap virgin of the family. I have only seen the first 2 episodes very recently, thanks to Andrew, who is showing me the light. A lot of you may also, not a lot of you, but many of you may have heard my voice before if I sound familiar to you. I'm the host of Trial by Stone, the Dark Crystal podcast. My background is primarily 80s fantasy and also horror. And if you hear me on the internet somewhere, I'm usually talking about puppets. So, but I'm no stranger to sci-fi. A lot of the time those worlds intersect and the Venn diagrams, intersect plenty of times. And today I'm right there in the middle of that Venn diagram with my love of my life and my future sister-in-law. So I'm excited to discover something that's obviously a really big part of pop culture and dive in and learn new things about it, and also check out this new reboot. I guess technically you would call it a reboot, right? Because it's a continuation of the show that already existed. So
yeah,
that's my perspective.
I'm curious to see how much they actually rely on the old show. Are they only going to borrow the premise just to kind of kick off a whole new sort of thing? I know in some of the press releases they actually do mention Sam Beckett's name. It's been 30 years since Sam Beckett blah blah blah, and now they're going to restart this the Quantum Leap Accelerator. And I'm wondering, is that just going to be a kickoff point? Are we going to get more info about what's happened over the last 30 years? Are we even going to resolve what happened to Sam? Those are all things I'm curious to see. I somehow doubt they'll resolve what happened to Sam. It's probably just going to not touch it. But
it seems to me like the mystery of it, the fact that we, the audience, don't know what happened to Sam, is also going to be true for the main characters. I imagine that's going to be part of what's driving the plot forward, right? Is that mystery. The characters in the show, it's just my conjecture here, probably also don't know what happened, and figuring that out over the course of the plot of this new series. I think that's a really good idea if that's the direction that they go.
Yeah, the ending of the original series, it kind of left me unsatisfied. It's just said, oh, he never returned home. Okay, well, what happened? Did he die?
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Did he leap forever until he had a heart attack at some point? Or did he fail in someone's leap and he was murdered in someone's leap,
Or did he, leap somewhere where he was really happy and just decided, I'm done, I'm going to stay here in this timeline?
Well, I don't think, that's actually an interesting thing to get into, because was it ever his choice to leave? No, it wasn't. It was an unseen power.
Okay,
right?
But if you watched the very last episode, oh no, I don't want to spoil Sydney.
That's okay. No, I don't think she's ever really going to watch.
Okay.
No, I probably am. Don't
she's
say
here for the
that.
New show. I'm sorry. I shouldn't say
that. I might. But listen, I think it's okay to spoil something that's been out for the entire, I think it ended, when I was, what year did it end?
Yeah, you were
93?
3.
Yeah, I think it's valid. That's on me.
Okay.
That I'm not up to date on it, I think.
Spoiler warning for any listeners, I almost said viewers,
yeah.
who haven't watched Quantum Leap and don't necessarily want to know the end of the show. Yeah, Sam Beckett never makes it.
Yeah, right.
I mean, why are you here if that's the case? What
exactly.
a weird person you are.
The thing is, in the very last episode, when Sam leaps into himself in the bar, and he's talking to the bartender, whose name is Al, but it's not Al. Anyway, the bartender kind of implies that Sam's the one that's been leaping himself, and that he can return home at any time.
Oh, maybe some sort of split conscious thing.
Yeah, maybe if he just decided he wanted to go home. But I think, because he said, look in the mirror. You're the one that's doing it. So, yeah, I think it's kind of like, yeah, he says he wants to go home, but subconsciously he's like, I can still save all these people.
I mean...
So it's a mission.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they made a point to tell the audience he never made it home, right? Like, it did not happen conclusively.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how depressing is that? Like,
it's super depressing. As Christina already said. Like that sucked.
It's such a final sentence, though, too. Like, it's not leaving open the possibility for
anything
for any continuation whatsoever. Like, it's very much like, it never happened.
Yeah. I think I read that the creator did that on purpose.
Yes.
And we're just completely ignoring his wishes now by continuing the series?
Because, right? I mean, maybe. We'll have to watch the show and find out. But these aren't Sam Beckett. This is something totally different. And that goes back to what I'm saying. I'm wondering how they're going to shoehorn the old series, or if they're not. If they're just like, here's a starting point, forget it all now. It's legacy canon, like all the other Star Wars stuff that Disney just shot out the window.
Yeah, so...
I just think it'd be cool if it turned out that a huge part of the actual plot, like the driving story, is sort of the characters discovering that, like piecing together that mystery and giving us the answer as to what happened, because...
I do find that super intriguing, but I'm also not going to put my hopes into that's what they're going to do.
Yeah. So, like...
I don't want to be disappointed if they don't do that.
But it would be cool.
And I was... like looking into a few theories, and there was the theory that his daughter was going to be one of the people, but like I don't see her in this new cast. I don't think they're going to use her. I was just kind of hoping there was some kind of relation that would connect that tie-in, but I guess they are doing that with the one character who was a person that Sam had leaped into in the past. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, oh, so we're just going to pretend the daughter doesn't exist anymore?
So wait, Sam has a daughter?
Yes.
And did he have a daughter before he started?
No, he leaped into someone and conceived a child.
So it's not actually biologically his daughter, it's his. But it is.
It's his.
How?
She's a super genius too.
So wait, so he leaped into somebody else's body. Mm-hmm. And did a bangarang and managed to still
this is
pass his DNA.
This has been hyper analyzed. Okay, so basically the creator has said, he explained it like this. If Sam, it's Sam, and it's like the aura of the person that kind of, so people see the person he's supposed to be. If Sam...
But his sperm is still there.
Yeah, so if Sam leaps into a guy with a broken leg, and we've seen this before, he's leapt into a guy who's blind, he's leapt into a guy who lost both his legs in a war. Sam doesn't have those disabilities. Like, he leaped into someone, his leg is not broken. If Sam breaks his leg, then Sam's leg is broken. So it's...
Well, I dig this, right? Because... this kind of goes into its sci-fi-ness, and that quantum mechanics or quantum physics is wishy-washy. And as much as we know about quantum physics, we don't know shit about quantum physics. And entanglement and all that crap is very weird. So what they could say in all of that is, yes, the physical body that Sam Beckett is in is, Dr. Smith, whatever. It's whichever person he's in.
The bad guy from Lost in Space?
That's Mr. Smith.
No, that is Dr. Smith.
Oh, no, yeah.
Mr. Smith is the Matrix.
Yeah, I was thinking Matrix.
Shame on you.
But in quantum entanglement, his consciousness makes it him. So whatever happens to his consciousness is entangled to him. So I can see what they're doing there. There's actually like a scientific sort of like basis for that being the truth.
It's complicated.
So the physical body of the person that he jumps into, his sperm just like is gone.
Yeah, because he's in the waiting room, and they actually so he
fixating too much on the sperm, but this is just
okay.
How do you?
He was actually, he did a leap where he was a pregnant woman, and when she went into labor in the waiting room, which is where the person he leaps into goes to, they go to the waiting room in the future. Like, he went into labor and the baby disappeared from the waiting room to be born.
Okay, wait.
I'm gonna have to go watch that episode. That sounds crazy.
It was a whack episode. He had like morning sickness and all this stuff, and I was like, "You're not pregnant." And he's like, "I felt the baby kick."
So wait. So he leaped into the body of a pregnant woman and then wasn't pregnant anymore because he's not pregnant.
No.
So was she?
Al was trying to convince Sam that he was not pregnant, but he kept having like all the symptoms.
While he was in the body of the pregnant lady.
Yeah.
Okay. And so his consciousness was feeling the effects of... But then what about the broken leg thing? If he doesn't get a broken leg, but he can get a fetus?
Quantum physics is wishy-washy.
It's like...
God.
Okay, so like, you remember Once Upon a Time, and they're like, these are the rules of magic, and like, every episode they broke their own rules? It's kind of like that.
Yeah. And see, I just kind of chalked that up to like really like bad writing, but
that kind of actually gets me into what I want to talk about next is Quantum Leap. When it was new, was groundbreaking in a way that, whereas I don't know if it was the first show to rely so heavily on these more complex scientific premises like quantum physics. But it's definitely the first one I know of. And even if it wasn't the first one, it wasn't popular yet. It became popular very quickly after this, whereas the scientific premise in science fiction of these much more complicated physics became prevalent. But now that has been the case for 30 years, what is this new Quantum Leap going to do that actually makes it unique as a sci-fi? What are they going to introduce, right? Although... quantum physics, like I said, has been popular now for roughly 30 years after Quantum Leap, I think, popularized it. What most people are going to think about when they think of quantum physics is Avengers movie, right? Ant-Man and the whole, like, quantumness that he goes into, that's what people are going to rely on. But because that's now a thing in all of popular culture or popular science fiction, what could Quantum Leap reboot bring to the table, I wonder? I don't know. This is kind of an open-ended question.
Yeah.
But like, our scientific discoveries, what is next in the scientific world that we have yet to see popularized in science fiction that Quantum Leap could bring? I'm curious to see that.
I'm gonna just theorize a little bit, like speculate a little, that based on the current sort of social climate that we have right now, it does seem to be very much kind of the thing to do, to be looking backwards and evaluating the ways in which maybe past media was, quote, like problematic, let's say. And while I'm not gonna, I haven't seen enough of the original series, obviously, that's my role here, to say whether or not that was, you know, where the show was maybe not necessarily politically correct by today's standards, but what if the sort of focus that we're going to be looking at in this new series is the characters leap back in time, go to different eras, and then directly address maybe social issues or socio-political issues that were happening in those respective time periods or parts of pop culture, and then like evaluate them and critique them through the lens of modern day sociopolitics, if that makes sense. Like, I could feel it, I could see it going in that direction, like using it, sort of the idea of quantum leaping as an excuse to, like, I don't know, go back in time to a 90s sitcom where they were making a homophobic joke and being like, hey, let's evaluate why that's not okay. Like, you know, I just could see that being a very 2022 thing that we do now. I'm not necessarily saying that that's a bad thing, because that could be interesting, and it could be really, like, have some important cool things to say if it's written well. I just wonder if maybe that's going to be the direction that they take it in. If that's the sort of the applications we are going to say we can use quantum physics for in this show, is like use it to sort of correct social injustice.
And they did touch on that they had a few very heavy episodes where they did touch on certain issues like the civil rights movement, things like that. So I could see them definitely doing that again.
That was a whole other thing I wanted to talk about too, is how although the show wasn't necessarily consistently controversial, they were not afraid to touch things, right? I would consider it way more woke, as they say now, than...
finger quotes.
Yeah, I'm using finger quotes. Or I should say, essentially just self-aware of, equality or not equality than most other shows of that time period. The whole concept of Sam needing to become a person, he basically does the whole trope of walk a mile in their shoes and then make their decision, right? Mm-hmm. And that's that whole show. It was teaching. It might not be what it set out to do, but as a very young viewer, I was not even 10 years old when this show was on, while you were watching it, while I just got it through proximity. I got firsthand experience of watching someone live someone else's life and struggle to even make decisions as them still. Like, we are all different people, and I feel like whether it was intended or not, that was a message this show was giving to younger viewers, is we're all different and we all have different struggles and we all struggle on different types of decisions. And that's way more than I think any show of the 80s, 90s, even the 2000s could have ever. That's a bigger message than any of those decades have ever really presented. Yeah. In a sci-fi show. Now, I do want to say, with the exception of like Star Trek Next Generation, which that was the actual point of the show to sort of like reflect on the human element of everything.
Yeah.
But Next Gen was the 90s, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So even that was later. And although not the first, Quantum Leap was doing it first, was still not popular yet. It was not in our political culture to sort of speculate like that at that time.
And I really, touching on what you said, I really liked in Quantum Leap, he did the whole walk a mile in your shoes, and the way they wrote the character was like, he cared about each and every person he came into contact with, whose life he was, taking over for however brief amount of time. It really brought about a human element in a sci-fi series.
Yeah, and Star Trek Next Generation is known for that, and here we have a show that's 5 years before that.
Well, TNG technically, I just looked it up, TNG technically started in 1987, so the tail end.
So I do take that
of
back.
The 80s.
Star Trek is a little bit older.
However, I think we know, we can evaluate that over the course of the seasons of Next Generation, it definitely explored those topics a lot deeper as it went on.
Whereas Quantum Leap does kind of jump into it right from the get-go.
Yeah.
When he's trying to save a pilot from himself.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It'll be interesting when the new show premieres, and we'll have sort of Christina able to evaluate it from the perspective of somebody who's seen the first chapter and knows it so well. I mean, we have that perspective of somebody who's fully aware of the shoes that this is going to be filling.
And sorry.
To juxtapose that with my evaluating it almost completely raw, like just seeing it for what it is, just through the lens of somebody seeing this show as a standalone thing and whatever background context the show decides to give me. Because I deliberately, I don't intend to dive back into the original series until after I've started watching the new one, because I think that makes for interesting, like contrast of perspectives. The fact that I'll be sort of seeing the new one first and then, you know, experiencing the original stories. So it'll be really interesting to see how the show stands up just on its own without that aspect of nostalgia that obviously Christina is coming to the table with.
Oh, me too. It's a different level of nostalgia. It was something I got by proximity, but I have still seen most of the show.
Yeah.
I know the core of the show, and I have that premise. I know what to expect when I watch Quantum Leap, whereas you do not. And it'll be, like you said, it'll be a good perspective, all three of us having the different perspectives that we have, watching this new show, and how does it stand up to those three varying level of fandoms or perspectives of those fandoms.
And I'm trying really hard.
Go.
For years, I have wanted more Quantum Leap content because, like I said, the ending just kind of leaves you hanging. And then this new show came up, and I'm all really excited. Everything looks really cool, how they're kind of pitching it. But I still have that, am I going to be hypercritical? Because it's not going to be the Quantum Leap I grew up with.
Yeah. And no matter what they do, it never will be. Right?
Exactly.
So that's going to be a hurdle you have.
Right.
Well, so I guess I want to ask Christina, though, like, when you think of this show, if you had to boil it down to just a handful of qualities that this is what makes it Quantum Leap, and I expect another Quantum Leap show to have these qualities, what are those qualities you're looking for? What are your expectations or your hopes of, like, this is what makes Quantum Leap, and this next show better have this? What is that?
Well, I really liked the dynamic between Scott Bakula and Dean Stockwell. I think they worked really well together. And I loved both of their characters. And I know we're not going to have another Sam and Al ever. Rest in peace, Dean Stockwell, by the way.
Yeah.
But
that was sort of recentish, wasn't it? When was that?
Last year, I think.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
But their chemistry was just amazing. And I've always liked those buddy team kind of movies and shows. So I kind of want to see if they have that same dynamic with these new characters. Another thing I just lost my thought. But,
well, actually, can I interrupt you for a second? As far as, I mean, I don't know, we don't even know, like, if there's really a two-buddy system going on here, right? For all we know, it could be 1 and 3, or it could be a whole team. But they might be able to come back after Relief, for all we know. How is this going to go? We don't know. But assuming that there is going to be a buddy system, like a Sam and Dean. Sam and Dean. Sam and
Close.
Oh, boy.
Sam and Al, will you be satisfied if it's a different sort of, but okay, let me see what I think. Okay, Sam and Dean, actually, from Supernatural, they have a duo dynamic, right? One of my favorite TV shows of all time is Psych. Sean and Gus have a buddy dynamic. Each one of them is different. Are you going to be satisfied if it's not the exact same buddy dynamic, but maybe something new? Maybe there's a different flavor to the buddy dynamic that has made it evolved? Or will you be dissatisfied if it's not similar enough?
No, I think as long as they have, because my biggest thing was Sam and Al, they were best friends. I just want to see that. I mean, it was kind of funny because Sam was like this kind of straight-laced guy and Al was this womanizing guy. And it was just funny to watch them play off each other. Cigar in hand.
All the time.
But
well, that's a super classic dynamic. Like, you have the goofy guy and the straight man.
Yeah.
And
well, even Sam and Dean are that. They're just a different flavor.
Yeah. So I just think as long as they have, if it goes the buddy dynamic route, as long as they have that bond, and I can see the actors have that chemistry that I enjoy seeing them work together, I'll be fine with that. They don't have to be the exact same characters. I'd actually like something different and new to work with.
Yeah. That's good. I mean, assuming these showrunners are aware of what people like, I mean, buddy dynamics have gone back since the beginning of film, right?
Yeah.
Like Laurel and Hardy, Abbott and Costello, all the way up to, Sam and Al, to the even newer Sam and Dean. Buddy dynamics are something that people have always enjoyed. But yeah, I agree. Like, I honestly wouldn't be disappointed if it was like the exact same dynamic, even though I don't expect
Right.
that. But yeah, I'll be happy to see what sort of dynamic does evolve, because even Sam and Al and Sam and Dean, more so with any content, I think after like the 70s, relationships in film media develop, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
They have
buddy
to start
dynamics
somewhere.
in like the 50s and the 40s, it was always the same buddy dynamic. Like every Laurel and Hardy movie, Laurel and Hardy have the same exact dynamic no matter what. Whereas I think as we are more complex creatures in our fiction now, we need more. So,
Yeah. Well, people also like to see development happen,
Overall,
and so
yeah.
you kind of have that romantic comedy dynamic in a way where like the two characters, you can tell how in love they're going to be by the end by how much they hate each other at the beginning. Like it's, they annoy the hell out of each other, and like how could these two from two completely different worlds possibly ever work together and see past their differences? So that's always something that works really well, that people always kind of come back to. But also, like, group dynamics are also super popular right now in media. Like, just to use, like, Stranger Things as an example. People are really
Scooby-Doo as an
into,
old
like,
example.
large ensemble casts also right now. So I wonder if maybe they'll explore that a little bit more. Like, have sort of a bigger group as opposed to just a two, like, a back and forth. But between two characters, or if there's more of a team that we're seeing.
It looks kind of like there is, at least, because there were other people in the background, but you didn't really see them that much. And that's also something I would like to see more of too, because in the original, you saw them, you knew they were there. Sam called their name, like them by name. He knew who they were. Al would talk about them. But you didn't really see much of the future. It looks like maybe from some of the pictures, they might do a little bit more exploring on what's going on, in their present
Not
time.
in
So we could very well get that team dynamic. I think there was like 3 or 4 people over by Ziggy, which is the computer for Sydney.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It's the algorithm that predicts all of what Sam maybe needs to do and what his circumstances are, and
she's
It's like Plankton's
the-
wife.
yes, and she's
Okay.
very moody. She has an ego.
Yeah.
I also, now that you have mentioned Ziggy, I'm also curious to see, like, is Ziggy going to be the same Ziggy? Are they is Ziggy still going to be running, or are they going to like make a new Ziggy? Are they going to have like a quantum computer, and that's going to be Ziggy? Or was Ziggy always a quantum computer? I don't even know.
She was always like I forget
High-tech.
the word that they used, but she was a supercomputer.
They referred to her as a her?
Oh, okay. Here's the thing. At the beginning, they didn't. They referred to her as a he, but when Sam went back into his present time for like one episode, she was definitely a girl.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is very, very ahead of its time then.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was planned, or they just decided one day, as TV shows often did in that time period.
We love a transgender computer icon.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's legendary.
And then
But yeah, it'll be... Sorry, go ahead.
and then I think after that episode, they started referring to her as a her. But they did. At the beginning, they referred to her as a he. And I think it...
Interesting that they referred to a computer as a gender at all.
But don't we as
Yeah.
humans always seem to gender things, though?
That's true,
yeah,
right?
well, like
I
boats
have
are
a-
always girls. Is like that's the rule, right? Like,
Yeah.
or is it planes?
No,
it's
No,
boats.
my car's a boy,
both.
so
Yeah.
my car's a boy. I don't care.
I have
Yeah.
two. I have 2 Jeeps. One's a girl Jeep. One's a boy Jeep.
Yeah.
Both my Jeeps.
Is
Definitely.
this like a human
Yeah.
thing? It has to be a human thing.
Yeah, I mean, we like to personify everything,
Yeah.
right? We personify our pets. We personify our objects. We personify whatever we look at for the most part.
Yeah, it helps us, identify with things, and make sense of our belongings.
Yeah.
Speaking of identifying with things, that's what I'm curious, right? Like in the original series, Sam was an identifiable character, and I mean Dean. Why do I keep calling him Dean Stockwell?
Lord. You haven't watched Supernatural in 8 years.
You're technically not wrong, though.
I know, it's Dean Stockwell's character playing Al. Al wasn't relatable, right? He was the character. I mean, he wasn't not relatable, but he wasn't the character that you're meant to necessarily be invested in. You're invested with Sam's relation with Al because you're invested with Sam, and that left a big mark on me unknowingly as I grew up and I became an adult. I had a very eclectic job history. I sometimes would think about myself as Sam. Like, what am I doing now? I'm a ride operator at a theme park. Now I'm a forklift driver. Now I'm a librarian. These are all real things I've done. And so that sort of character that I identified with sort of became important to me in my fiction. And is this new show, right? If it's, I agree with Sydney, it'll probably be a group dynamic because that's really in right now. Are we going to get that one character that we all love? Or is it going to be like, I don't want to say Friends, but I'm going to use Friends, where we all have our own that we enjoy.
Yeah.
I'm curious about that, right? Am I going to have a Sam that I think is me? Like, I insert myself into the fiction and I'm like, I'm this guy? Or am I just going to have to pick and choose? I don't know if either one's a good answer for me. I won't know until I see it and what I feel about it, but I'm curious to see that.
Because it could be interesting if, there are multiple characters who are leaping around and having different timelines, because then you could see different, not to keep using the word dynamic over and over, but for example, to contextualize it with Friends again, but let's say whatever this ensemble cast that we have is, hypothetically, if whoever the Chandler of the group has to leap and is suddenly embodying a lawyer or somebody who has to be really serious, and then what if the Monica of the group, who is super has hardcore OCD, has to jump into the body of a kindergarten teacher
or a hippie.
Or a hippie, somebody who lives in a yurt. There's something to be said there, because it could be really interesting if there's multiple characters and each one then, through jumping around and walking the shoes of other people in different timelines, it helps them to then connect with each other better.
Yep.
So I feel like that could be interesting if that's how they approach the group dynamic. And again, at this point, all complete conjecture. For all we know, it could just, be a carbon copy, and we have two characters that have great chemistry, and one is just like a mini Sam and the other one's a mini not Dean. Ow.
Can we talk about Dean Stockwell's performance, by the way? He basically, except for on the occasion and in the first episode, never interacted with anybody, right?
Except for sometimes small children and animals, because they could see him.
Okay, that's right. Oh, I
and that was always those are some of my favorite episodes, because there was always the cutest thing. You've got this guy who, Vietnam vet, POW, all this stuff, and he's just had this rough life, and you just see him turn into this pile of mush when these little kids are like, oh my gosh, are you an angel? It's the cutest thing ever.
An angel.
What a great performance, though, just in general, that man brought to the role of this, like I said earlier, mostly unrelatable character.
Yeah.
But he played him in such an endearing way. I can actually relate him to Barney Stinson from How I Met Your Mother, right? No one healthy looks up to Barney Stinson.
Okay, but everybody might know one. I think that's what we're getting at here. Because we, as the audience, are meant to identify with Sam because he's the main character. He's our protagonist. And like you said, we see him step into so many different roles that it's easy for people from all different backgrounds to eventually find some way to connect with Sam. However, his buddy, Al, maybe we've all had a buddy. Like, nobody sees themselves as an Al, but somebody else might. What? Did I disappear?
Okay.
No?
Oh, yeah, I lost you for a second.
No?
You're back.
So
Am I still here?
now I'm back?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
That's weird. I wonder if it was a connection thing.
maybe.
That's what it sounded
Yeah.
like. It looked like to me. Did I cut out too?
No.
No? Not that I know of.
Okay, interesting.
So nobody thinks of themselves as an Al, but somebody else might think of you as one because you're not the main character in their story. Does it make sense? Like, nobody thinks of themselves as a Barney Stinson. Well, I'm sure some dudes do. Let's be real.
Yeah.
But
All them, what do they call them? The Sigma males or the Alpha males? I don't
They're
remember.
incels. No. And I just lost half the audience. No.
But, you know, to contextualize it in terms of, you know, for this show, I can think of, like, Al kind of reminds me of, like, an uncle or maybe, like, a neighbor, somebody that I knew once. Because that's the point. He's not the main character, but you love him because he probably reminds you of somebody. So
And he
that's
was
part of what makes that dynamic work.
Yeah, and he was a very good character. And there's actually, I used to read, like, all the books because they had a book series. There was one that was written, and it was him. It was
Like, from his perspective?
Sam. It was after. I think it was Pulitzer. I think that's what it was called. And Sam had leaped into a doctor at a hospital, like, that Al was at as a patient after he got rescued from being a POW in Vietnam. And it was just like this thing. It was just a story about him and his struggles and everything. And I don't know, to me it brought, like, a new depth to the character because you got to see even more into this character you don't really see a lot about. You know, from watching the show, you know about his, like, wife, his military background, things like that. But I don't know, to me it gave me kind of like a deeper dive into him as a character, and it was kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it kind of like, what was that later in the series?
That
when that happened?
I don't remember when the books came out, but
the show had sort of been on for a while.
Yeah, the show had been
probably
on for a while, and these are just, I don't know if they're accepted as canon, but
But I think the experience you're talking about in terms of, oh, that's cool to see him in a new light and to see more sides of him. I mean, it's kind of like, to equate it to what I was talking about with how he reminds you of somebody in your life. Like, it's kind of like when you grow up and you become friends with your parents in ways that you couldn't have until you were an adult. Like,
right.
Or older siblings, for example. Like, when you start to learn more and empathize with a person that previously was only like, that's just my older cousin, but then you get closer to their age and you start to see the world through their eyes a little bit better, you connect a little bit more, you start to like them more. That same sort of thing happens with fictional characters, the secondary ones particularly.
You know, I'm sorry, I actually went on a side tangent here. I'm looking at the cast of our new show.
Yeah.
I don't think I know anybody here really, except for Ernie Hudson. But I'm trying to, like, look at their ages, and I'm trying to just decide, like, is there even an Al type character, or is it just a group dynamic with an actual absence of that character? Maybe it's just my perspective, but because of when I watched Quantum Leap, right, I was very young. Al was older, but was he? I don't know.
Yeah, he was a little bit older than Sam.
So is Ernie Hudson the only, like, character that could be an Al in this cast lineup?
Probably because Ernie Hudson plays Magic. I forget his actual name, but the guys all called him Magic.
Herbert Magic.
Yes.
Williams.
He was actually one of the people that Sam had leapt into when he went into he was in Vietnam with Sam's brother.
he's the returning. Oh, I didn't know he was in Quantum. I don't remember that.
Ernie Hudson wasn't the guy in the show, but
okay. But he's playing
the character. And so I'm really excited about that. Because to me, that's a tie-in.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm looking at this synopsis right now, and just for anybody listening who maybe hasn't checked it out, this is sort of NBC released more details about it.
Finally.
And it says Ben makes an unauthorized leap into the past as the main character, leaving the team behind to solve the mystery of why he did it. At Ben's side throughout his leaps is Addison, played by Caitlin Bassett, who appears in the form of a hologram only Ben can see and hear. So she's sort of...
I haven't seen this yet.
The Al. She's a decorated army vet who brings level-headed precision to her job. At the helm of the highly confidential operation is Herbert Magic Williams, Ernie Hudson, a no-nonsense career military man who has to answer to his bosses who won't be happy once they learn about the breach of protocol. The rest of the team at headquarters includes Ian Wright, who runs the artificial intelligence unit Ziggy.
Played by Mason Park.
Alexander Park is playing Ian Wright, not Ziggy. And
I'm sorry.
And Jen Chow, played by Nanrisa Lee, who heads up digital security for the project. So it does seem to be a team dynamic. So, but also like we have the main two.
Yeah.
This
so
Addison
it's definitely going to be a different buddy dynamic.
Yeah, because it's a.
But it is similar, right?
Yeah.
Because if Addison, played by Caitlin Bassett, is an army vet, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna like her already.
That's very similar. Dean Stockwell. Al was in the military.
He was
at one
Navy,
point, right? He Navy, yeah. So they are tying similarity lines to their characters.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Let me see here.
I do. I'm going to touch on it. There is the potential here, I guess, for a very different buddy dynamic. As I don't know these two people, Raymond Lee and Caitlin Bassett.
She's my age. I just IMDb'd her. So
Raymond Lee looks like he's your age as well. They look the similar age, is what I'm saying.
He's pretty. That's all I know of him. Yeah. I don't know him.
He's very good looking.
I've seen him like in bits and pieces, but
I know the face for sure.
But I don't know him.
But
well,
are they going to? Sorry, my microphone's bouncing around. Are they going to like? That's a different relationship they could play with, right? Now there could be like this forbidden romantic relationship, and is that a writing trope they want to fall into, right? Because if she's a hologram, they say love is all proximity, right?
Right.
Is he going to fall in love with someone he can literally never even physically have?
They're going to be like a Master Chief Cortana situation.
Yeah, that's a very good, I think, replica. And are they really going to take a show that could potentially introspect on the human element and our socio-political everything, and then make that story all over again?
They give us a romance.
Where they just make the female character as the love icon for the man. It sounds like no, because they gave her all this like cool badass backstory.
Yeah,
but,
she has level-headed precision. So,
And then if you add a love story onto that, I mean, you could do that badly and cheapen the character, but you could also do it good and add a dynamic to it.
They very well could be going for like a Mulder-Scully dynamic too.
And Scully was never cheapened with her romantic interest in Mulder.
Right.
No, she was still a badass.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. You can do it well.
Yeah.
And make the character even more dynamic.
You could argue that a lot of people like dropped off of watching X-Files after their romance became more explicit and less.
I think more people stopped watching X-Files after Doggett came in.
Yeah.
Wait, I forget when I stopped watching X-Files. What was that last one?
I think more people stopped watching X-Files after Agent Doggett came in.
Yeah.
And Mulder kind of phased out.
Yeah, see, I don't think I even watched that far. I think I watched a couple seasons after the movie.
Oh, okay.
And then not even as religiously as I had before.
Yeah.
I recently went back and watched, I say recently, it was like 7 years ago.
Time is a social construct.
The last 4 years are really like 1 year.
Yeah, I watched everything. And then a couple years after that, the new season came out. I really liked the new season. It was definitely different. It didn't have the same feel, but I did like how they revisited Mulder and Scully and how their lives had gone differently all those many years. I think, actually, now that we're talking about X-Files, I think X-Files is a great example of how you can continue a story. I personally do like the new seasons. I don't think they're actually well received, though. I might be alone, mostly in that.
I mean, the new season was. I personally really enjoyed it. I liked that each episode had a different sort of tone. Like each episode explored the different facets of what made the show work as a whole. So each episode was almost like an anthology. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And then bookended the season with the plot-heavy sort of progression of the story, sort of thing.
Yeah. But point being, like, that Mulder-Scully dynamic is so iconic, and what makes it work is, one, the will they won't they of it all. Like, we know they have great chemistry and we want them to get together, but at the same time, do we? Because it's so great that we're lingering in this tension of it. But also the fact that, again, we kind of have that straight man and the goofy one, except in this case they flipped that on its head and the straight man is actually the woman. So they could be going for something like that here. It could be something totally altogether. Maybe, who knows? Maybe there's no chance of it whatsoever because one of them is gay. Why not? Which is just going to open up a whole bunch of other possibilities for the story. Maybe one of them has a love interest that's in the real world. You know?
Yeah.
That's actually that is. Correct me if I'm wrong, Christina, but there is an episode where Sam jumps into a woman and romances a man. Yes?
Yes. Okay, so that's actually one of my favorites because
is it when he's the Midwestern girl?
No. He leads into this I want to say she's like a secretary or something, and this guy that she is working for is like a real sleazebag, and he's totally screwing around with this girl, and the girl actually has like this huge mental breakdown when he's like, come on, you know I'm never leaving my wife or whatever. And so Sam goes in because through the whole episode this dog is just making a pass after pass after pass at Sam. So Sam goes in and, like, quote unquote seduces this guy and and then just totally flips it on his head. So once the guy's like, oh yeah, I knew you wanted me, he's like, by the way, I'm a man. and then the guy starts freaking out, and it was like, yeah, okay, so we knew this guy was a dog, and now he just got his comeuppance.
Yeah.
So that's definitely. Whoa! I got way more echoey. I moved my monitor, and I think that caused an echo. Sorry. That definitely brings up. That is a very progressive way to do a man seducing a man as a woman in the 80s/90s, depending on when that episode came out. But we could definitely, I think, break some more boundaries potentially with this one. Like, let's pretend Dr. Ben is gay. We don't know that's true or not. He could be straight. It doesn't matter really overall for the story. But let's just say, for the context of this hypothesis, that he is gay, and he hops into the body of a man who is not gay. That's definitely conversation starting, to say the least, in today's climate, where somebody is doing something that they might not be comfortable with.
Yeah.
In that sort of way, you know, and they could essentially do an episode exactly like the one you just described, with today's
lens.
Socio-political issues.
Yeah. The climate, it's something that's a little more relevant, definitely now. And it's not that those weren't things people were thinking about then. It just wasn't things that
you don't talk about it.
They weren't on TV.
Right. I think that could really work. I think they really broke boundaries. It was like, okay, yeah, he's leaping into a woman. He's got to pretend to be a housewife. He's got you know?
Yep.
And it put him in a position where he's like, well, I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
You know, kind of thing.
Or be
Yeah, it's like... And I think in the one episode I was talking about, the person was like, tomorrow, why don't you put on a little makeup? Because it was the 60s. So,
Oh, yeah.
and he's like, what? You know.
So not only were we looking at sort of the inherent, there's always going to be at least a little bit of backwardsness in the way things were written at that time, just because of the nature of it being the 80s and 90s. But then you add that on top of it, the backwardness that they're deliberately trying to teach us about that was happening in the 60s. So it was like a double layer of it. So that's what I mean when I say, like, I think this show now is probably going to jump at the chance to directly address those things. To sort of directly maybe correct those kinds of choices that were just all over television and film at that time. Right. And because I feel like most new things now are directly making an effort to correct those things. And, you know, to mixed responses, because, you know, well, this is the world we live in.
True. True.
And, you know, the world is one big angry comment thread 24/7. But,
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's something, no matter what this show does, some of the original fans are going to be vehemently angry at what it does.
Yeah.
If it's not progressive enough, people are going to be angry. If it's too progressive, people are going to be angry.
Like, it's too woke. Everything's got to be woke, man. I saw a woman. Now I'm upset.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, Quantum Leap, like we said, was pretty woke for its time. I mean, there were some episodes that I've watched again. I'm like, oh, I can't believe they used that kind of language. I mean, I get why they did what they did, but I'm like, I don't know about that. But
that's not okay anymore, Sam.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I get what they were going for from, you know, a writer's standpoint, like trying to make it authentic to the time period. Mm-hmm. But sometimes I'm like,
you can make it authentic to this time period without actually going to those
exactly
extremes.
Yeah. And so it's like, I get it, but it makes me uncomfortable to watch some episodes because I'm like, oh, that's really not cool how they went about that.
And I do want to expand on that sometimes that can be okay, because sometimes you need to be made uncomfortable. Yeah. But you have to do it in a way that's making it clear that it's incorrect.
Yeah, like, this is making you uncomfortable, that's good, this is why. And
what am I saying about it?
Yeah, like, if you're not uncomfortable, like, a lot of the episodes that touch on civil rights and racism, it's like, you're uncomfortable because this is wrong.
Yeah.
And it's what happened.
So what are you going to do about it?
Exactly.
Basically. How do you feel about that? Well, because it's meant to be, it's supposed to invite and inspire thought and change. Yep. So it has to be a purpose. Like, everything that's written, there has to be a reason why it's written. It shouldn't just be. So.
And shock value is not, unless you're watching a horror movie, shock value is not a legitimate reason to write something.
I'm so sick of shock.
But also, you can
I want to go back to the Glenn death scene and Walking Dead.
That's when I quit.
Yeah.
There was no reason for the gratuitous of it.
Yeah.
They could have killed the character tastefully. It was only to shock the audience, and to me, that's an illegitimate writing technique.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could say that it's a horror show, and I just, you know, you need to expect that kind of thing. But it wasn't. It had evolved way past just being a horror adjacent.
They kind of lost their humanity at some point, and it just made the show kind of not fun to watch anymore.
Yeah. Because it's supposed to be a show about humanity.
Exactly.
So,
now, granted,
because the humanity are the Walking Dead, right?
Yeah.
They're the ones that are like, they're a dead man walking.
Yeah.
They're the walking, not the
and
zombies.
Because, you know, we've fallen off and haven't watched it in so long. Who knows what it's like now? Like, they might have course corrected, and it's just too late to go back.
Oh, is it still going? I thought it ended.
I think
it's still going.
It's on.
Oh, I didn't even know.
Yeah, it is still going. So I can't speak on, you know, if whether or not it's still implementing those techniques, but we are not a minority in terms of that opinion. Lots of people were lost at that point. And yeah, because it felt senseless. It felt like it was just meant to manipulate emotions, but not actually have something worthwhile to say about it. It was just to make us feel sad and angry. And if you're going to evoke an emotion, good writing evokes emotion, but also presents you with a thought and a reason, a conclusion to accompany that emotion, right? So I'm very interested to see what this new series, how it's going to explore those things and what sort of questions it's going to pose. Is it going to lean more scientific? Is it going to lean more philosophical? Is it going to lean more social, socio-political, as we've kind of touched on? I do like now that we've gotten this...
Or is it only going to be an action sci-fi?
Yeah. But the fact that we have more characters now to focus on indicates to me that it's going to be a little more than that, because there's already, like, we have all these other characters with names and descriptions.
Oh, you're frozen again.
Am I? Am I back?
You
You're
can.
good.
Okay. Yeah, so the fact that, we have the main two, we have Ernie Hudson, we have the AI guy. I imagine this Ian Wright character who runs Ziggy probably going to be like your computer nerd, brainy guy on the team. That's always your Velma. That's important. And then whether or not they're going to sort of...
Oh, I do want to make a correction. Mason is non-binary.
Oh.
Non-binary. So we should be saying...
Apologies.
Oh, Mason Park. Oh, wait. Mason Park. Hold on. I know who this is.
Oh, they're in Sandman.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. They play Desire. Okay. Cool. Yeah, so... Oh, I love that. Sort of a non-binary Velma. That's cool. I mean, I'm assuming that this character, just because it's the AI person, that means that they're going to be nerdy. But, hey, we like nerd representation here just as much as we like non-binary representation. So why not both?
Love it.
So I'm hoping that's what we get here.
I was going to say that casting someone like them is already telling me that they've made a decision about being progressive. I'm just going to use that word. It's not necessarily the word we all use anymore, but they're going to basically embrace.
Well, they're acknowledging this exists. This is our reality. Deal with it, and that's kind of, we have to do that because
I do find it unlikely that they would shoehorn this character to be a he or she.
Yeah.
So it is likely they will be a they.
Yeah.
In the show.
Which I really like that, how a lot of shows are doing that, because back in the day it was like, you were a boy, you were a girl. The boy and the girl, they fall in love.
Everything's very binary and
it's
follow
like,
the system.
That's not what the human race is. There are so many different people. We're all different. We all have different, wants, needs, desires, different ways we identify ourselves, how we feel about ourselves. I like that we're now expanding on this in media.
Yeah, we can make a story about that. Yeah, we can make a story about a man and a woman falling in love and doing all that. But not every story needs a story about a man and woman falling in love.
Yeah, exactly.
Not every story needs love into it at all. Period.
Right?
I don't need a love story in everything I watch, and that love story doesn't have to be the same love story in everything I've seen.
Especially now, too, we've also acknowledged that aromantic people exist as well. Like, there are people out there who just have no interest in romance in their own lives and can't relate to it because it's not something that they experience. And so, not every story needs to, follow necessarily a formula. But to kind of tangent or segue a little bit, though, on the topic of formula, I would say that with a TV show, with something episodic, there is a certain amount of formula that has to be adhered to on an episode-to-episode basis so that it consistently feels like it's all one show.
But it can make its own formula. It doesn't have to use the formulas of tried and true tropes.
Yes, but I was leading into a question mostly for Christina, but also for you, Andrew, because you've seen more of the show than I have. But is there sort of a pattern or a formula that is intrinsically Quantum Leap? Like, you have sort of expectations as you're watching the show, like generally what's going to happen? Like,
Well, yeah, the show can be. I'll go
Yeah,
first
yeah.
because my answer is going to be more generic, and you'll have a better answer that's more specific, probably. In that the show does have a basic format, in that Sam leaps into something he doesn't know anything about. He has to discover what it's about, discover what he wants to do, and that sets him free to the next leap. And that's the basic formula. That is the quantum leap formula. What can happen inside that formula? It could be a murder mystery. It could be a love story. But no matter what kind of story you're telling, that's the formula. You have a character that is clueless about everything going on. He has to discover the story, and he has to help write the ending, or in most cases, change the ending.
And there was backstories to both the characters. They were both, one had the love of his life that he left behind. The other one had the love of his life who had pronounced him dead because he'd been missing for so many years in Vietnam. So you have those, but they were background. Like, you knew these backstories, but it wasn't front and center in your face kind of thing. So it was basically Sam and what he was doing in that episode with whatever trope. And they did a lot of genre type stuff too. They had like a noir one. They had some westerns. They took advantage of the fact that he could go anywhere within his lifetime and put him in different situations. So, like Andrew was saying, the tropes can be different, the rules can be different, the type of story can be different week to week.
Okay. But there wasn't like a sort of a formula in terms of plot, pacing. You can expect like the beginning part of it. This is where he learns where he is.
Act 1 would be what is happening. Act 2 would be what do I do. Act 3 would be I need to do it.
Okay.
It's basically...
Is that a good summary, Christina?
I would say so. It's basically like if someone took you right now and put you into someone else's life. Sam had to figure out who these people were, what their relation was to the person he was in, kind of what he was doing there in the first place. And, he had Al to help him out with that. And then, the second kind of middle part would be a lot of times he kind of had an idea of what he needed to change. And then you have your conflict, your struggle. A lot of times if someone was supposed to die, and he had to stop them from dying, they would always, they'd fight him on it. Don't tell me I can't do this kind of thing. So kind of like trying to figure out.
Sometimes he'd be wrong about what
exactly. But it was like there was that struggle. And then in the third, like kind of part, that was where everything kind of came together, and he either did what Ziggy said he was there to do, or he figured out something completely different. And managed to still change history for the better.
Okay.
And that actually, that brings me to another question I have, is are we going to inspect whether or not, like, is this new crew, I can almost guarantee you, actually, it's going to happen at some point in time in the show. They're going to question if they should even be doing this, and if Sam should have ever done this. Should we really change the past? What's happened has happened. They're gonna dissect that at some point. I can almost guarantee it.
As they should, and they did actually. In this 5th season, they did bring in those evil leapers, which I wasn't a big fan of.
Evil leapers?
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of that kind of story arc, but it was like their mission was to go back in time and like screw everything up.
I don't remember that.
It was only like 3 episodes. Like.
Okay. Did they work for like an evil corporation?
Yeah.
Excuse me. Did they work for? Let me redo that line. Did they work for like an evil corporation, or were they just nefarious individuals?
It didn't go too deep into it, but it seems like they worked for a nefarious organization.
So if this show takes off, I can almost guarantee you that will pick up at some point. Even if it's not in direct relation to the episodes we've already seen. I'm just like in my sort of like showrunner mindset about how they keep a show going, right? That just it's gonna happen in a modern
Right.
show. There's going to be the exact opposite of what the main character's doing. That character's gonna exist. That's such a normal. I mean, it's a Locutus to Picard, right?
Yeah, and it would be interesting to see. Like I said, it wasn't my favorite arc, but if they can find a way to do it, like I don't know how, but a little bit better, I think it could be interesting to see.
Another thing I want to bring up real quick, how hard it might be for this show to find its voice or its niche or whatever, right? For one, a lot of what we have talked about is like how it's an introspection of the human element. That's not necessarily a unique thing right now. It was a unique thing back then, with only the two shows that I can think of, Star Trek and Quantum Leap. But, I mean, Westworld is like the king of the introspection of the human element right now. So bringing another show that is doing the same thing is going to be difficult to grab the audience, with the exception of, you know, the people who are definitely going to watch it, which are the people who have watched the original. But keeping that audience is going to be tough. Now, they could also come from it from this is a deep sci-fi show. Like, I mean, Quantum Leap was a sci-fi show, right? But it wasn't a deep sci-fi show. It wasn't so steeped in sci-fi you had to be a sci-fi nerd to like the show.
Yeah.
But there's not a huge, that I can think of right now, deep sci-fi show. There seems to be like a few freeze frames that I've seen of this new show seems to have like some sci-fi-ish elements going on. So I think it will be difficult to find that larger audience, which is something that they're going to have to address at some point.
They could possibly, because it is a time travel show, and I don't know how much Sydney knows about the quote-unquote rules that sometimes get broken. How Sam could only leap back and forth within his own lifetime. So I'm assuming that this new guy what did we say his name was? Ben, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Dr. Ben.
Yeah, so I'm assuming he'll have like the same, if not very similar rules. So that's still like, Sam was in the 90s, so this guy could possibly take on like a whole new set of time travel.
Mm-hmm.
I lost the word I'm looking for, but you know what I mean, like a whole new set of
the guidelines,
decades,
the
where he could go to.
Well, yeah, he's visiting different things.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, I am actually not sure I like that. I think if they are wise, they will find a way to overcome that.
The lifetime thing?
So, yes.
They did.
So he can go farther back?
Yeah, well, I mean, this guy, let's assume he's our age. I don't know how old Raymond is.
I think he's in his
35.
30s. Yeah.
He's exactly my same age.
Yeah.
So
he's two months younger. So
you've got the
than me.
80s to the early 2000s.
80s. Mm-hmm. If 86 is as far back as we go, I think they're by far limiting the experiences he can have.
But they did find a way around this a couple times.
Yeah.
In one episode, when he and Al switched places, because he was connected to Al, he was able to go back to before he was born. And then I think there was another one where he went back as far as the Civil War because it was a family member.
Oh, that's interesting.
So they could definitely break the rules and find a plausible way to do it.
Yeah. Well,
which I sincerely hope they do.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to think of a show that can only time back as far as 1986, and that just seems far less interesting to me. And now, I wouldn't mind if the bulk of it is in, the 80s and 90s. Because there's definitely a lot of interesting stories.
Well, I feel like that's
there.
part of probably the point, is because that's the time period when the original show took place. So we're going to see probably a lot of, I imagine, the new characters exploring what was happening with their science and their people during the time that the show was on originally, because they're trying to figure out what happened to Sam, we think.
And their 1999 is not equivalent to our 1999. Yeah. They were far more technologically advanced than us in their 1999 than we actually were.
I don't know how much you remember from the first episode, but
I remember Dean's Al's. I remember Al's holographic jacket. Like his hollow jacket.
And the girl had like the light up earrings, and it was very
Blade Runner.
Yeah, like it was gimmicky almost, like, oh look, we got all these flashing neon lights everywhere.
Yeah. Are they still gonna go with that, or are they gonna kind of like retcon that a little bit, maybe?
Yeah.
I kind of hope they don't retcon
because it's funny.
I kind of hope we see what the timeline evolved into, and I kind of I don't know. That was part of the aesthetic of Quantum Leap. I loved it.
Yeah,
I loved Al's outfits. Like,
they were a staple of the show.
The other thing too, when you were talking,
I also remember the gold one he wore. But
when you were talking about like trying to think of other sci-fi shows that delve into the human, the depths of the human existence and all that. And immediately the first thing that came to my mind, even though it's not explicitly a sci-fi show, is the Twilight Zone. Because
Twilight Zone.
Everything about the Twilight Zone, every single episode was about some sort of a moral dilemma, some sort of human error, something wrong with humanity that needs to be directly addressed. And like nowadays we also have Black Mirror, which is a modernized version of that same exact thing. And all of those things are very popular right now. And the idea of bringing back the anthology style of storytelling. So they could be leaning sort of in that direction, where even though we have the same main characters each time, if each episode feels like kind of its own self-contained lesson in and then kind of connect it with an overarching plot of them trying to piece together the mystery of what the hell happened in the 90s with Sam Beckett. I could see them kind of going in that direction, maybe cranking up the seriousness a little bit, like kind of leaning into that kind of Black Mirror Twilight Zone vibe, maybe. Because I feel like the original show seems to me like kind of is very lighthearted. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, they did have some, I don't want to say a very special episode because it definitely wasn't as cheesy as, Full House.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they did have their serious episodes where they touched on, hot topics. But
yeah, but the tone.
The tone was pretty lighthearted for the most part.
Yeah. So I wonder how true to that they're going to stay, or if they're going to try to, like, mature it up a little bit.
I do have my own suspicions, not based on anything Quantum Leap based, but based on just television show making in our current time. It's going to be hyper angsty. I don't know, that's not
broody,
the right word.
Like dark, edgy, gritty.
Yeah, edgy. No, edgy is the perfect word. It's going to be hyper edgy because that's what's in right now. It's what makes people want.
Well, edgy or like super leaning into the 80s, 90s nostalgia, like a la Stranger Things. Or,
Oh my God.
You know what I mean?
I just have a fan fiction crossover right in my head. Stranger Things, Quantum Leap. Okay.
Stranger Leaps.
Can you imagine?
Yeah. I mean, you are
Quantum Strange.
leaping into strangers, so.
Like, what the hell is this?
Another sort of random tangent, while we were on a little break there, I was looking up a little deeper into the cast, just to see, because as soon as we addressed, like, where Mason was from, and I realized who they were, I was like, oh, I should probably go and see if I'm an idiot and I know who anyone else is. And it turns out that Caitlin Bassett, the one who's playing the sort of Al character, but a lady, she actually is an Army veteran. She is a military veteran.
Like for real life.
In real life.
Oh, wow.
Who spent 7 years in the U.S. Army Intelligence and the National Security Agency with 3 tours abroad prior to her honorable discharge with multiple combat and meritorious honors, and then returned to the U.S. to focus on acting.
So she's a badass in real life.
Yeah, and doesn't...
She's going to bring the element of her actual history into that
Because when
character.
I looked her up, I was like, she hasn't been in much, and then I see why, is because she's hasn't been acting long because she was literally in the military. And that's cool. Like, that makes me think of another actor with military background who I think is a really incredible actor.
Oh, she's only been in one other thing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
This is her second thing. Wow, what a major role for your second role.
But the actor that
Awesome.
it makes me think of is Adam Driver, because
Yeah.
part of why he's such an amazing performer is because acting was kind of his outlet to deal with like the trauma that he was going through, and it was sort of a bonding like he started a theater program with his I don't know what the military terminology is, Christina, forgive me, but his people in his troop or whatever, all sort of like they were coping with their sadness and their trauma and their struggles by like doing scene work and monologues and stuff. And so when he was done in the military, he was like, I want to keep doing this. Acting is great. It's helping me process stuff. And it made him a better actor. Highly recommend those of you listening looking up Adam Driver's TED Talk where he talks about it. It's freaking phenomenal. So that makes me really excited about this character because I feel like she's going to have something really interesting to bring. And that's probably also interesting for you, Christina, as a veteran yourself.
You know what? I always get really excited when they have someone just military in general and they portray that person in a way that's believable. Like, you're like, oh yeah, they could definitely have been in the military. And when they do military characters wrong, I just get pissed off.
So now you're not going to have very much of that with this character because she's going to know. Like, if they write her in a way that's like, that would never happen, she's going to know it. She's going to be like, no.
Well, hopefully, I mean, there is also the issue that she is a relatively unaccomplished actor at this point. Hopefully they listen to her.
I would think that, personally, if you're hiring a veteran to play...
You're doing it so because they know.
You want that knowledge. A smart person would take that as a learning experience. I would,
I want to relate this back to a completely unrelated genre and franchise. But just speaking of smart people, Peter Jackson and Lord of the Rings, when Christopher Lee was instructed to make whatever sound he was supposed to make when he was stabbed, and Peter Jackson was trying to describe to him the sound he wants to make, and Christopher Lee just goes, do you know what it's like to be stabbed? And he then proceeds to tell him from first-hand experience what would happen, and Peter Jackson was just like, well, so do it.
Christopher Lee was like,
and
yes,
so,
I have been stabbed, so...
Yeah. So, yeah, what we see is Christopher Lee's personal experience of being stabbed in the back in the movie because we had smart people listening to the actors that they hired. So, yeah, one can hope that if they're going to be progressive enough to hire non-binary, that doesn't even make sense, 9 twos, a non-binary person, that they are also going to listen to a female veteran about the female veteran.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, I gotta say, just in conclusion for me, as somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience with this original show, just objectively looking at what we know so far about this new show, it seems like really, it's gonna be really interesting. Like, even if I didn't know that it was a reboot of another show, I'd be like, this is a really interesting concept. So that gives me...
It definitely appears to have a strong cast.
Yeah.
And it's not really leaning too hard on using like big name celebrities. Like, Mason Park is more popular now because Sandman really took off and people are really into them right now because they did such a good job as Desire. But that hadn't happened yet at the time that they were cast.
Raymond Lee has been in a lot of things, but they're like character parts.
And then the other girl, I can't remember her name anymore. Hold on, I just saw it.
Jewel State?
No. Wait, Jewel State is in it?
Oh my god, I do know
She's
that.
in it?
Holy crap, I know who that is.
I have read these things like so many times and I have not seen her name once.
Yeah, I didn't see her on here either. Jewel State is in it? Okay, for anyone listening, that would be Kaylee from Firefly.
Oh my god.
Or I can't remember her character name, but from Flash Forward.
Wasn't it Becca or Beck? No. Yeah,
she plays a character named Naomi. So I do know two
Flash
people. I know Ernie and
I'm gonna find out her name right now.
Side note: Ben Foster has a new movie.
I loved him when I was younger. Hold on. Flash forward Disney. Rebecca. Yeah, it was Becca.
Yeah, it was Becca. I can't believe Jewel State was staring at me that whole time, and I just kind of glanced over her name and never really looked at it.
I didn't even see that. The main...
She's the second
Oh my god!
Wow. Raymond Lee was on Westworld.
He was in Top Gun too, and I was like, I didn't even...
Yeah, I saw that. I know his face. I've definitely seen his face. I've seen a lot of those things, but none of them were like...
He wasn't like
something that like stuck to me.
But
he was like in your face.
And he was in How I Met Your Mother.
None of
too,
these people are like Ryan Reynolds. You know, none of these people. It's not any of the Chris's. It's nobody who's like everybody's gonna flock to it specifically for that name. It's not leaning on the stardom and the celebrity of somebody who's trendy right now. And these were people who were cast.
But now we do have a sci-fi veteran.
Yeah.
in Jewel.
Yeah. But not a lead character,
I would actually consider Ernie... I would also consider Ernie Hudson a
sci-fi
veteran because Ghostbusters is sci-fi adjacent, at least.
Yeah. Supernatural sci-fi.
Yeah.
Nanrissa Lee.
But yeah, I like the fact that... I mean, yeah, they do have some big names in there, but I like the fact that it's not... in your face, this is the celebrity that's been in everything and now he's going to be in this kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm always wary of that because I don't need to watch something because I like someone, which, I admittedly will do. But if I'm going to be introduced to a new thing, I need it to be a good thing because it's a good thing, not a good thing because so-and-so is
Exactly. And touching on that, Scott Bakula is not even going to be in it. So, I mean, maybe he'll do a guest spot. No, he's actually confirmed he's not in it. He might do a guest spot in the future. I'm not saying that's impossible, but on the cast, I think he's got another show going.
Oh, okay.
I remember Scott Bakula had said in an interview a few years ago that he would love to revisit the character.
But that was before Dean died.
Unless I'm imagining that, but yeah, that's true.
So...
Right? How could you revisit Sam without Al?
I mean,
I'm sure if this season takes off, I'm sure he'll come back in it, and they end up doing another season if this one goes well.
What I don't want to see is a computer generated Dean Stockwell.
Yeah,
I don't want to see that.
Dumb question. Do we know what this is streaming on? What this is going to be on?
I think it's actually going to be
probably Peacock.
I think it's going to be on NBC. It's
so
Sunday,
then probably Peacock.
It's Sunday at 10, I think.
Okay.
So at Peacock, I assume if they do put it on a stream service, it'll be Peacock. But they also might not until after. The
reason I ask is because I wanted to make sure it wasn't a Netflix original because we're not happy about Netflix originals because they only last one season if they're good. Usually.
Netflix is the new.
Yeah, I've got a few shows that I fell in love with. I watched the first season and then.
Yeah, Netflix is notorious for just pumping out as much as they possibly can and with no plan for continuing it. And they only continue it with more seasons if it takes off on like a massive pandemonium level like Stranger Things did, or like The Witcher, and it becomes this huge cultural where like everyone's buying merch at Target for it, and you know, like dressing as the characters from
It's the equivalent of throwing noodles
Exactly.
at the wall.
It has to be pandemonium or nothing less, because if it's not this humongous, marketable, gigantic explosion of a success, even if it's successful, if it's not that successful, then they're not going to renew it, and it ends after one season, even though it has a huge fan base. So,
You know, as much as I hate to say it, though, from a business standpoint, I do get it, because it's not the same as it is on a network show. On a network show, if something is just kind of successful, it's making money. On Netflix, if it's kind of successful, it's still overshadowed by their big successes, and because they're not ad revenue based, I get it. I don't agree with it, and it still makes me upset, but at least I understand it from a business standpoint. But I also hate when big corporations only make decisions based on business and not on what is.
they don't listen to the fans, and it's not artistic integrity.
They don't care about the consumer. They only care about the bottom line. And it's fine to care about the bottom line, but not at the expense of your consumer fan base. Because that's also just a bad decision from a business standpoint. If you destroy your fan base, like for one, once Cobra Kai and what's the other one, Sydney?
Other what?
Oh, once Cobra Kai and Stranger
And The
Things
Witcher.
are finished.
That's
and The
the
Witcher.
three.
We're leaving Netflix because there's literally nothing else.
Yeah.
And we're upset with the company. So yeah, they're still going to get us for a little while, but then like we are done. HBO is doing better, and Hulu even is doing better with What We Do in the Shadows. Oh my god.
Yeah, I definitely, after Stranger Things and Cobra Kai are done, I'm probably gone.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, Lost in Space finished, I think, earlier this year. So,
I never even watched the second
God,
season.
it was so good.
I watched the first one. We loved the first one. I don't know why we never watched the second one. I think it was just timing in our life, what was happening in our life at that time, and it just didn't happen.
Well, and then the third season, it took a while for them to come back because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but it was really good.
So, just out of curiosity, we talked, this was our, introductory episode, or is our introduction episode. We talked a little bit about ourselves, but we didn't really go into too much detail about other things. Christina, what's your other favorite shows? You have Quantum Leap.
Okay, well, I mean...
Let's go generic, right? Not necessarily your only all-time favorite show of all time, but what are some of the picks of everything that you've ever watched?
Okay, well, I mean, I mentioned obviously my few Netflix favorites. Also a huge Once Upon a Time fan. Mm-hmm. And then back in the day, I watched Sequest, like the first season. After that, I kind of lost interest. And then X-Files. Those were my big ones.
I myself, obviously I like Quantum Leap. Essentially, so much of what I watched is what you watched. As my older sister, who had, not necessarily control of the television, because I wasn't trying to use the television. I just, if what was on was what I was watching, I wasn't like arguing about it. Not that I remember anyway. I watched, as a far too young of a child, probably X-Files. Like, I don't ever remember it bothering me, though. Which is funny for someone who doesn't like to watch horror. X-Files has never frightened me. And X-Files is one of my top shows. But I also like a lot of funnier things. I've mentioned Psych. That's one of my favorite shows. It's very comedy-heavy crime
Psych
drama.
is great.
Or not crime comedy, I guess. And more recently, I started watching My Hero Academia. It is the first modern anime I've ever watched. I've never really been into anime. But My Hero is a very, very good show on its own merit, regardless of whether it's an anime or not, which it is. And as I mentioned that, I go back to what you watched. And that after I watched My Hero, we decided to watch Sailor Moon again.
I love Sailor Moon.
Yeah, so
Pretty great.
Sailor Moon was always nostalgic to me, even though I had never really watched it on my own, because you watched it and you loved it, and I remember it always being on. And I also think something I watched came on after it.
Could have been Dragon Ball Z, possibly.
I don't know. I've never watched Dragon Ball Z.
That was me, too.
I mean,
That that might have been before Sailor Moon.
I shouldn't say never, because yes, I have watched episodes here and there. But actually, now that you mention it, it might have gone Sailor Moon, Dragon Ball Z during the Cartoon Network phase when it was Deke.
Maybe.
Right? That was the same. And then Animaniacs maybe came on after?
Possibly.
I can't remember. But I did watch Dragon Ball Z before I watched something else, and I think Sailor Moon came on before that. But recently, I'm talking like a year and a half ago, not even actually, we started watching Sailor Moon again. They redubbed it in 2017, so it's no longer different from the subtitle version. The American or English dub is now concurrent with the Japanese dub.
Finally.
Yeah, so I recommend it.
That's really good.
They're no longer cousins. They are just, in fact, lesbians, because as it turns out, that's
Well, and also the in the first season, the one bad guy that they had that was a girl that was in a relationship.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They're both men.
It's
Like,
different.
yeah.
Yep.
deal with it, America.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Or Sailor Jupiter's very bisexual tendencies.
Yeah.
I was like,
And the fact that she has a crush on Neptune,
Not Neptune,
right?
Uranus.
Or is it Uranus?
oh,
Well,
everybody.
they all. That's the thing. They all are
Yeah.
are hot for Uranus as soon as she shows up, and they think that she's a dude.
And then when they find out, and Jupiter's like,
Yeah.
oh well. But everyone else is like, oh my god, it's a woman. And Jupiter's like, yeah.
Like, so big deal.
still hot.
So yeah, I do recommend, if you've never seen Sailor Moon, or if it's been a long time since you've seen Sailor Moon, the English 2017 dub is on
Yes, it
Hulu.
is.
So is the subs.
Yeah.
You can watch
I
it
watched a
over
lot of subs when I was in Washington in the military because that's what they sold. So I got to see all the stuff that was out in Japan that wasn't necessarily out in the U.S. yet. So that was cool. I got to see how it was intended rather than, oh, they're cousins.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what, do they think children are stupid?
Well,
Now, thankfully, I actually don't remember that being a thing. I don't think I got to any of the Outer Planet episodes when I was younger. I think it was only the inner planets, which is Mars, Moon, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus. So I do believe my first experience with Uranus, Neptune, Saturn, and Pluto are recently. Even though I knew who they were always a mysterious entity to me. And I never experienced the very confusing cousins as a child.
And like those of us who actually knew the show were like, really?
I can't imagine trying to watch that and being told they're
Yeah.
cousins. Like, it's like someone who
Well, it
never
wasn't
experienced
just that-
it seems
yeah. I mean,
ridiculous.
because it wasn't just that they tell
it
you
is.
that they're cousins; it's that they deliberately cut out a bunch of stuff. There's like
Yeah.
a whole butt ton of the content that they actually took out so that it was easier for you to accept. Like there was just, they got rid of so much. There was just hours and hours of content across the board that was just not seen. Really sad. And they also downgraded the theme song. I was just talking to Andrew about this earlier. They the American English version of the theme song is so much more simplified and way less musically complex than the original theme song. And there's no reason for it. That's so silly. But anyway.
Off on a
I also
Sailor Moon
like
tangent.
Sailor Moon.
yeah.
So I also enjoy Sailor Moon, but
and I made her watch it.
yeah. I mean, I wasn't opposed to watching it. I think a lot of 90s kids who just weren't avid anime watchers in general a lot of us didn't realize that the version we were exposed to sucked for a reason, that wasn't the Sailor Moon. Like, that's just...
Yeah, you weren't against it. You just kind of wrote it
because I remembered it for what it was shown to me. As a Californian child in the 90s, I thought that's what it was, and it was only okay. Like, that version of it, like, didn't really grab me as much, even though I thought I liked the concept of it. But now, watching the real one, like, especially the first season of it, it had a very sort of Monster of the Week, like, almost in, like, a Scooby-Doo sort of tone, but more supernatural, like, actually supernatural, and not... Old Man Smithers in a mask, but you know, it actually was like kind of scary at times, the different villains that they would face and stuff. So it's definitely much better than what they fed to us on Saturday morning cartoons over here in America. But in general, I mean, I know I mentioned already I host the Dark Crystal podcast, so of course my favorite show I have to mention is Dark Crystal Age of Resistance on Netflix. But
Netflix.
The main reason why we're upset with Netflix in this house is because they literally canceled Dark Crystal Age of Resistance the day after it won an Emmy. So yeah, fascinating, right?
What?
Yeah, it was
win an Emmy. Well, it used to be like if you won awards, you were guaranteed like at least a second season.
It was just so expensive, and that's really the main thing is it's expensive. It's a lot of work. COVID happened, and they were like, "Well, we're not going to put a bunch of puppeteers in close quarters anymore. That's a thing of the past now." And except, you know, they could do it now,
right?
We could do it now, but it's. I could be bitching about the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance being canceled until I'm blue in the face, and I do on my other podcast. So. But yeah, so that show is fantastic in real life. Yes. Big deal for me. We like puppets in this house. Anything Jim Henson is definitely something that, I am gravitated toward. I was a big fan of like the Storyteller, Fraggle Rock when I was little. But also when it comes to TV, I am a big horror fan. I love horror anthologies I've mentioned before. My all-time favorite TV show ever is actually Tales from the Crypt. That's my favorite. Everything about it. I also am a big American Horror Story fan. It's gotten a little wackadoo lately because it's much more focused on making all of the seasons interconnect and stuff. And I kind of prefer the first few seasons when it was like each thing was more separate and you had to like look for the Easter eggs that connected the different seasons, and it wasn't quite as like on purpose. But I still love the show. I'm still going to keep watching it every time. I don't care. Creepshow, another one, anthology horror series. My two favorite shows that are currently on the air right now are What We Do in the Shadows and Yellow Jackets, both of which have spooky elements. I'm a spooky hoe. I like things that are scary. I'm a Halloween enthusiast. I love horror, but Ash vs. Evil Dead. Andrew likes that one too. I
do. Yes. Anything with Bruce Campbell, yeah. I'm down to watch.
And I also, of course, super love fantasy. You know, I was really into Game of Thrones before it got. We all know how that ended. And I'm really excited about the new Lord of the Rings show. Obviously, at the time of us recording this, it hasn't come out yet, but it's about to, and I'm really excited to start watching it because Andrew and I are both massive Lord of the Rings fans. So yeah, fantasy and horror is sort of where I'm coming from here. If there are puppets, be they friendly or scary, I'm on board.
I do love a good puppet.
I love a bad puppet. I just, stick a hand in its hole and make it come to life, and I'm gonna watch that.
I forgot to mention my other favorite. I'm gonna say two favorites actually. When you mentioned two sci-fi shows, one of which is a much larger sort of like the other one. I did drop off eventually, but Stargate is the one I ended up dropping off. The movie is phenomenal. The show is very good for a while. But the one that I think was my like so much of my sci-fi that I watched growing up, Christina, was because you watched it, and I ended up watching it, and then that I think it just kind of molded my taste for fiction.
It's all my fault.
Even my Star Wars love might have come for you. I physically do not remember seeing Star Wars for the first time.
Oh yeah, me either.
Which means I had to watch it when I was so young. Which means someone else was watching.
Yeah, it was probably me. Probably was.
And I remember you had they've remade a different version of it now, so it exists again. But there was a Star Wars deck building game.
Yes, I had that.
I don't know why I remember that, but I remember that. And then, of course, me and my best friend growing up, I introduced him to Star Wars, or maybe he already knew what it was. I don't remember. But yeah, we played with our action figures well into our teenage years. I am proud to admit that. Yeah. But going back to what I was saying is the one that I started myself, no one showed it to me, and then I followed through, is Sliders. I love Sliders.
Yeah.
It's Parallel Dimension. For those who don't know what Sliders is, it's very good.
When you first showed me Quantum Leap, I remember thinking it does kind of remind me of Sliders.
I was going to say, it has a similar sort of scientific premise. I think the shows are very different, but the whole, like, going into a different place where you exist as someone else sort of thing. Whereas, I mean, Quantum Leap, he has to exist as someone else. In Sliders, they are still themselves, but they have to figure out, like, what version of themselves are in this parallel universe. Sliders is parallel universes. But I do... spoiler alert, I always stop watching after John Rice Davies dies because, well, the show just gets crap after that.
The character,
like
before everyone freaks out, the actor is still...
Yeah. The professor doesn't make it through the show. So, anyway, Sliders, another one of my favorites. So now you know us a little bit, you know our thoughts, you know our opinions. We've talked a little bit about what we are expecting, what we might see. I think that wraps up this episode, yes?
I think we're good.
Yeah. It's been like, 2 hours? Jeez.
Almost, yeah. Remember, a little bit of that is a break, so I think it's like an hour and a half. I think it's a good wrap for our introduction episode.
I guess we'll leap into another episode some other time. See you on another time.
Yes.
Sometime after the 19th.
Okay, Paul. Yeah.